Okay. This should be working now. If you could confirm that you can hear me, please. Good. Then we shall continue. Hopefully the buffering will have gone away this time. I hear heavy breathing. That's excitement that you can hear. That's excitement. Thank you. Marissa Womble, you sound mad. Do you mean I sound crazy or angry? I am slightly irritated by the buffering issue. If you think I sound crazy, I assure you I'm not. Maple Bucket Rutledge, do you feel that your dad could have done more to protect you? Yes, I do believe that to be the case. Narc Awareness, would you feel distressed, upset or angry if you saw extreme methods of torture towards animals, particularly towards dogs and cats, on the internet? I wouldn't be looking at those things anyway because they don't interest me, and it would not distress me, it would not upset me. I could demonstrate anger for the purposes of, for example, if a target was an animal lover and it upset her, I would express my anger about it, but I have otherwise no interest in animals. DC Izzy, why do you use the terms intimate partner rather than grill friend, side bitch? I use intimate partner because that's the description that is applicable. Kim Sikorsky, do you have a high tolerance for pain? Reasonably high, yes. C-Star, thought it was future faking. Yes, I was waiting for that, and I was also waiting for he's giving us a silent treatment, etc., etc. So, at least you're paying attention. Katina, so am I. Indeed. Do you wish your dad left your mother? No, because I should imagine that I would have been left with her, and all of us would have been. "17 Bad Kitty, do you know that the abuse you felt is the same that your victims feel?" If you say so, I can deem that it would be different because that happened to me as a child, whereas my victims are adults. Betty Boo, what did you feel when you saw the tower on fire? Nothing really, other than there's going to be some political fallout from this. Kiana Lowe, are most narcissists that are married greater narcs? Or do you think they are mid-range? I don't think that there is. It's certainly not the case that they're all greater narcissists. Greater narcissists are rare. But narcissists who are married will come from all schools. Nikki B, are you worried that your identity would be compromised as your blog grows in popularity? I accept that there is a potential risk for that. I regard the risk as minimal, and therefore it causes me no concern. Catherine T, have you ever been on the phone with someone you are interested in and had someone you were fucking around with in the same room? Yes. Ocean Sound 100, you show respect to us, unusual for a narcissist. Well, there's a good reason for me treating you courteously. I think respect might be putting it a little bit high there, Ocean Sound. I'm courteous because I naturally am. Also, there is no reason for me to be unpleasant to you in the context of this interaction. And furthermore, I apply certain rules on the blog for the purposes of making it successful. And at the end of the day, it suits my purposes as well to be courteous. So, there we are. Antistar 211, is London full of narcissists? There are lots of narcissists in London, yes. Debbie Within, do I research mind control? No. JT, is your sister's real name Rachel? No. I naturally have changed the names of the people I have written about in my family. Miss Terry, I'm your number one fan. Marvellous, thank you for that. DC Izzy, have I met any female greater narcissists? Yes, I have. Are they different than male graters? Well, aside from the obvious physical differences, generally their behaviours are similar. They do tend to use sexuality to a greater extent than male narcissists. And Siobhan, I see, yes. Well, glad you found it anyway. Debbie Within, there is much mind control going on in the world by authorities. Do I see it? There is control, and that's largely done through fear. The creation of fear is a particularly useful way of causing control, and all regimes use it, from totalitarian to democratic. Pathless Land, if you need love so badly, why do you destroy it? Isn't that like eating yourself? I need fuel badly, and love is just one form of gaining fuel, so as a consequence, it isn't a case of needing fuel so badly, love so badly, but fuel. And why do I destroy it? And it isn't always destroyed. Indeed, if I destroy an appliance, it will become no good to me. Instead, we lash out at them because they let us down, and they do not provide us with what we require. Photo via pop. Do you do it because it is helpful or because it gives you fuel? I've already answered that question earlier. Laura Cotter, could we possibly touch on the Dom BDSM subject again? Accursed buffering made us miss the answer. Oh yes, blame the buffering, you pervert. You just want me to talk dirty again, don't you? Okay, very briefly, I'm not part of the BDSM scene in any way. I'm dominant in my sexual interactions with people. If I had somebody who was submissive during seduction and was into that kind of thing, then I would certainly provide it to them, and I would also utilise it during devaluation for somebody who was not into all of that. Apartments. Have you ever talked openly with other greater narcissists about your kind? If so, what kind of discussion was it? No, I haven't. Ocean Sound 100, do you stay out of the public a lot? Often through my work, I travel and therefore go to certain places which are not what you would say being out in the public, but I certainly have interactions with a lot of people because of my fuel matrix. So when I'm in this country, I have an extensive social group, a lot of people that I know through my work. It's not a case of me shying away from going out on the street. There are instances where I am not in the public domain as often perhaps as some people. Lance P, do you recognise some of your followers as roadies? No, I don't ask them to move any speakers and electronic musical equipment around for me, and I don't ask them to pick prospects out of the crowd either. I do recognise them as faithful readers though, so I appreciate them in that respect. Ocean Sound 100, you and Madonna would be a sight to see. Indeed it would. Miss Terry, am I married? No. Wolves & Co. I've missed loads of sex answers, damn it. I'm sure you'll find them. Or you can ask more, I suppose, and I may well ask them. Stevie Ann, will you please answer the question? I can hear that foot being stamped. Do you think about being serious and securing a partner when you are in your silver years? No. I'll always be able to do that, so it's not something that I need to think about now. Morin Angel 84. What do you think is the best way to interact with a financially abusive narc husband when you want him to buy something you need? Give him some fuel, make him think you don't need it. Those would be strategies that would potentially work. Kim, why would a narcissist come back after disengagement, wanting a marriage? Because he would want to bind you to him. He now sees you painted as white. He wants your fuel. He wants your character traits and your residual benefits. JT, HG, pull my hair. Very well. I can't quite reach from here. C-Star, HG is the shit. Thanks. Patricia, Mr. Tudor, do you remember your dreams? No, I don't dream, or if I do, I don't remember them. Carrie Ann, you are truly a unique, smart, sexy man. You access the buffering problem that fast. You are fucking perfect. I want you spared. HG for president. Thank you, Carrie Ann. That's very good of you to say. I hope the buffering stays away. And Angel Georgina, my mid-ranger was shit in bed. He learnt all from me. Quite possible. Ocean Sound 100, Madonna would let him dominate. Of course she would. And then she would sing to me afterwards. What song should I ask her for? Crazy for You. Oh, it's the obvious one, isn't it? Stumbling around, do you think of yourself as middle-aged? No. Yes, Stevie, and I thought the rattle was going to be flying around. Jenny Danaher, do you think if your mother had been removed from your life, maybe you wouldn't be a narcissist? I think there was a very strong possibility that would not have happened. So, thanks, Mother. You're very welcome, Laura Cotter, and also to you, Tim. Kiana Lowe, 50 Shades of Grey, the movie. Would a mid-range narcissist state 50 Shades of Grey is us in comparison to a relationship with a mistress? Does he know he's a narcissist? Well, if he's a mid-ranger, no, he doesn't. And making such a comment about that utter dross of a movie and a buck by him, alongside the fact that he's a narcissist, is every reason to get out of there. It's an abomination. Avoid. Amna Omar, how did you develop awareness about yourself and when did it start? Well, I did answer that earlier with regard to the question about an aha moment. But essentially, I realised there was something special about me in terms of the way that I behaved when I was a teenager. A former girlfriend of mine, who's a psychology student, or psychology graduate more accurately, pointed out to me after university about some of my behaviours and what that meant. I did not accept it. I went away and read about it and realised that she was correct with a lot of what she said. And thereafter, my awareness increased, and particularly so as a consequence of the work that I have been doing as of late. Mabel Bucket Rudglidge, how can you tell if your boss is a narcissist? There are a variety of ways. Generally, you would be looking for how they deal with criticism. Are they impatient? Do they delegate tasks to everybody else, claim credit for others where other people have done the hard work, but they make out that it's down to them? Do they fail to accept responsibility? Are they particularly demanding? Of course, what you have to bear in mind is that you may be dealing with a lesser or a mid-ranger or a greater, so they will manifest in different ways. But essentially, you need to look at the various traits that apply to narcissism, and also the fact that there is no empathy. Indeed it does, Siobhan. Thank you for agreeing. Katina, do you like the older stuff of David Bowie? I'm not a huge Bowie fan, although I recognise that he was certainly talented. Indy, I met Madonna at the DC March. She has a gap in her two front teeth, you know, which apparently means that she's highly sexed. So if you're gap-toothed, that's apparently what it means. I think the earliest where that was recognised was in Chaucer's Wife of Bath. She was a randy old goat, had several husbands, and she was clearly a narcissist as well. Fifi Lapu, did your mother ever apologise to you? And if not, do you still want her to? She has never apologised to me, and no, I don't want her to do so because I know that she wouldn't mean it. Tina Ray, where do narcissists believe they will go when they die? With regard to me, My view is when you're dead, and it's over. That's why it's important to build your legacy while you're here, which is what I'm doing. Thank you, Katina. It is Bowie. You're welcome, Siobhan. Stronger Wendy, am I gap-toothed? Good point. No, I'm not. Kim, my narc sucks in bed. Thanks for answering my question. You're most welcome. Who chooses the pictures? Asks Sierra Grant for the video. I set a brief for a minion, and that person scurries away and then presents me with a selection, and I make the final choice. You're welcome, Amna, and thank you for your polite response. That's appreciated. Ocean Sound 100. Interesting. Perhaps randy and wealthy. Clem Mallock. Would I ever meet a fan from my blog? I would like to meet all of my readers at the appropriate time. And Charlene has admitted that she's gapped tooth. So we all know that Charlene is a randy goat. Denise Guy. Do I ever have a short supply of fuel? Not very often, because I'm very effective at gaining it, but it can happen. And if I do deal with it, how do I deal with it? Well, essentially at the time I become irritable and restless, and I make sure I go and find some. Debbie Within, what do you think of the people here that are fawning over you? I think that it's always pleasant in terms of the fuel. I also recognise that people are very appreciative of the information that I've provided to them, which has enabled them to grasp very difficult situations for them in a way that they otherwise would not have been able to do so. It is also evident, because of the nature of people that are ensnared by our kind, that inevitably they are going to be drawn to me, and therefore the fawning is a combination of appreciation, a natural instinct to be drawn to somebody like me also. Susan B, do I miss my father? No. C-Star, you found the whole series of 50 Shades entertaining. I'm pleased you put it in inverted commas and humorous. Philippoo, what year were you born? Wouldn't you like to know? Kiana Lowe, would a mid-range narcissist risk it all? Why the unprotected sex with a mistress? That's because of sense of entitlement and lack of accountability. He's not going to get diseases. He's Superman. Why take pictures of us coupled up? I presume you're talking about you as the mistress doing that. He'll use it for triangulation in due course. Do you honestly believe the victim would not tell the wife? At the time, a narcissist expects you not to say anything because of the control that you are subjected to and the fact that you ought to do as we want. And of course, if you do in due course, by the time you usually get around to doing it, you've been smeared beforehand. Not always. Gutina, how tall are you? I'm 6'1" in height. Thank you, Denise Guy. You're most welcome, and to you also, Gina's number 1. Thank you, Patricia, for that kind comment. Anna Tenkate, are narcissists able to cry with actual tears? Yes, they are. Mid-rangers do it regularly, but they're only crying for themselves. Lance, do you enjoy mind-fucking the lesser uneducated ones with word salad? Well, I don't tend to necessarily choose uneducated individuals to be people who are in my intimate primary sources, or even within my inner circle of secondary sources. But certainly I would do so with uneducated individuals that are a tertiary source. Nikki B, has the quality of your IPPS deteriorated as your age? I think as you mean as you age. Not at all. Philippou, please admit that you were born in 66, 67, 68. No, I won't admit which year I was born. Susan B, do you think your mum misses your dad? She'll miss his fuel. She pretends that she does. C-Star, you do realise you are in overtime. Thank you, though. Indeed I do. But I recognise that people are asking lots of questions, and I enjoy responding to them. Mo Cowboy 55, do you find more pleasure in destroying another psychopath or an empath? Well, as mentioned, I don't tend to destroy my appliances because then they'll be no use to me. So perhaps a better question would be, do you find more pleasure in toying with another psychopath or an empath? And the answer to that is an empath. Why? They provide more fuel. Nita Tim, can you feel other physical pain? At least more than emotional pain. Yes, I feel physical pain. Chop my arm off, it'll hurt. Hajiro, when I get the evil stare, what should I do to stop it? Walk away. Adelaide Hellas Media, why does my narcissist wife rather have such a fascination with gay guys, including secretive relationships with them, coffee meetings, open flirting? It's probably the case that those individuals are particularly empathic, and she's tapped into a vein of individuals who happen to be gay. So it's not so much necessarily with them being gay, but more about them providing her with the prime aims, first of which is fuel, and that's is best coming from empathic people. There is also the risk that she might be setting them up to have a 3-ball with you, so be aware. Thank you, Basile, that's very kind of you. It's quite all right, Siobhan. Discarded, it's disengaged, Tina, or shelved. The difference is that when you are shelved, you don't suffer a long devaluation. You may not even suffer any devaluation whatsoever. People often think when they've been shelved that they're experiencing a silent treatment, and they're not. They're just put to one side because a shinier toy has come along for the time being. When you've been disengaged from, you will experience a more sustained devaluation. Catherine T, do mind games turn you on sexually? Yes. Philippou, does your mother have the same diagnosis as you? She has avoided that happening, but she is similar to me. She's not a greater. Colleen Brosnan, will a somatic mid-ranger always hoover, or are there times that they never do? There is always a hoover, as I've explained, if there is a hoover trigger and the hoover execution criteria are met. So don't think that it won't happen. What you will be able to do, though, is minimise the risk considerably. Annabelle Black, do you get with men? I presume you're asking sexually. The answer is no. Kim, why does my narcissist say I'm too fat when I'm slightly overweight, but looks at pictures of big, beautiful women? Very simple. First of all, such contradictory behaviour is not at all surprising for our kind, because we can do as we like, and engaging in that contradictory behaviour also confuses you, and therefore hurts you. He says that you're too fat because he knows the issue of your weight will provoke you, so you'll be hurt or angry, so he gains fuel. He then looks at the pictures of BBWs because he sees a gain for him to be made in terms of triangulating those individuals with you. Kiana Lowe, all I wanted was to get laid. My God, did it have to be so complicated? I knew something was off. I made it easy, no strings attached. And therein lay the problem. Amnar Omar, what would you say to your mother as last words if she is dying? I've won. Thank you, Narcangel. Let's hope everybody else realises that. Claudine Buck, is there any wounding that would cause you never to hoover again? No, but it certainly, again, is a factor that has to be taken into consideration. So, for example, wounding will not affect a greater as much. Mid-ranger is affected particularly by it, but you need to look at the other factors that are in play, such as how easy is it to contact you, what the fuel needs are, what your fuel was like, are you with somebody else, are there any other obstacles? And you look at that whole picture alongside the question of whether we were wounded and also the extent to which that wounding occurred. Debbie within, do you ever feel protective over someone? I can do in terms of protecting my interest in that person to ensure that I continue to get what I need. But it's born out of self-interest. There's no altruism when it comes to my behaviour. Denise Guy, how do narcissists react to being discarded? If you read the articles, How No Contact Feels, parts 1 to 3, you'll have a detailed examination of that with regard to the lesser, the mid-range and the greater. Ocean Sound 100, are there any narcissists here? I assume that you're asking that in the sense of, do I think that there are any here, rather than asking them to admit to being here. Thanks, Salvinu. Do you have any interest in anything for its own sake, not connected to fuel? As I explained earlier, no, everything is about fuel. Philippu, have you fathered child knowingly? No, and would you knowingly? No. Mo Cowboy 55. Do all your appliances believe you when you assure them that you would not destroy them? When do I ever give them that assurance? Catherine T. I'm tall and thin, and my ex used to tell me gain weight sometimes. Did he say that to make me uglier than him? Yes, it was all about maintaining superiority and drawing a reaction from you to gain fuel. Hajira, should I attempt to get back at my narcissist? The best way to do so is not provide any fuel and go no contact. If you want to go further than that, it isn't for everybody. Trish, why don't you talk about what happens when you're low on fuel? I already have done so. Thank you, JT. Appreciate that. Hajira, should I attempt to discredit my narc? Not the wisest of moves, as a consequence of the impact that it will have. C-Star, are all the repeat questions irritating you? Slightly, though I appreciate it might be that people haven't heard it because of the buffering. So I'm keeping that in mind and trying to keep the irritation under control. Rebel de Justice, why some narcissists appear in photographs kind of very puckering what they feel? Well, they're doing that because they want to look attractive and important, not realising, of course, that they look ridiculous. Philippu, will you ever marry and have children? I have been married. I may marry again. I will not have children. I don't want them. Debbie within, do you ever feel like a victim got over on you? Ha ha ha. Of course not. They never have. Katina, do you think you have ever been close to falling in love? I repeatedly fell in love when I was younger. It was only when I was older I realised that I didn't actually feel love, because I don't know what it is. Or rather, I don't know how to feel it. I understand the concept of it, because I mimic it repeatedly. Kiana Lowe, why don't I want children? As I explained earlier, it's because they get in the way, and they will take attention and fuel away from me. Renee Seville, do you think you can find other ways of getting fuel? This is the only way that one does gain fuel. So as a consequence, I do this. Jenny Danher, do you punish or go no contact? I largely have little to do with her, but as a consequence of that, I do need to have some interaction with her, and I look to wind her up. You're welcome, Miss Terry. I try not to give her any fuel, and I look to irritate my mother. But it's useful to give her a false sense of security and let her think that she has some degree of control over me, because that will assist me as part of the grand design. Mackerel asked, do you ever lose your facade? No. I do have my fury ignited from time to time, however. Stumbling around, I read that you had planned an experiment to go no fuel just to see what happens. Did you try that? Not yet. Miss Terry, do you mind if someone falls in love with you? Not at all. Renee, I agree, thank you. Smash that like button. Yes, show me some love. Thank you, Kim. I'm glad that you think that's the case. Thank you, Catherine T. All the psychologists are listening in. Big shout out to the 3 psychologists there. Thank you for listening. I hope you are making notes, and you can provide me with feedback, but I don't want an invoice. Thank you very much. Kim, Sikorsky asks, maybe you can answer my question this way. Should I believe what my intuition tells me about my ex-narcissistic, especially when he has told me some pretty weird and scary things? Yes, trust your gut and read my work. Hi HG, hello SK. Being the greater yourself, how do you know so much about the other two types? Are those inferences reliable? I've spent a lot of time around them. They're in my family. I've worked with them. I socialise with them. And therefore what I write about them is entirely reliable. And of course, you will see on the blog that what I explain resonates with many people. So I've watched and I've observed. And I listen, of course, to the empaths, the victims, in terms of the way that they behave, so I understand them also. Randy Andretti, I assume you have few male friends. You assume incorrectly, Randy Andretti. I have numerous male friends. Sandra Burgard, I've just joined again from another device. Welcome back. Did you answer Kiana's question about recognising great sex? No, I don't believe I did. Is it always just a performance and a source of fuel? Yes. "17 Bad Kitty, do you think that you and any of your victims had a special connection? Or are all victims the same? They are all appliances. They, of course, were connected to me, because that's what I want to achieve, but I was not attached to them. Kim, can you recognise a narcissist by sight? If I was watching somebody for an hour and observing their various behaviours, I may well be able to do so, but I would prefer to listen to what they've got to say. But if I just saw somebody as they were moving in a 30-second instance, I wouldn't be able to tell from that. Archangel, do you like to be challenged during devaluation to up the fuel potency, or do you prefer the crying and hopelessness in your IPPS? I prefer them to be feisty, and crying is fine. Hopelessness is a form of fuel as they're dejected, but as a consequence of that, I'd rather them try and fight back. It's much better. Fox Wade, what does a consultation with you cost? An email one is $40 and an audio one is $100, and they are very useful. Many people have undertaken them, and they have come back repeatedly for them. Miss Terry, can I be your new president? I don't think that I could, because I'm not an American citizen, so there would be a bar to that, but I'm sure I could work around that in some way, couldn't I? Jojo Bongiorno, are there any former primary sources you have never hoovered? No, I have hoovered them all. Katina, aren't you getting tired? It must be getting late there. It's only 10:30 in the UK. So I'm usually awake much later than this anyway. Debbie Within, are your victims somehow damaged and easy to manipulate, or are you simply drawn to their empathic traits? Well, if you've read Sitting Target, you'll know that the reasons for targeting people are their class traits, their empathic traits, and also look for the special traits, which includes an individual being damaged, and therefore that does become something that one would look for. So that sits alongside the empathic traits as well. Hajira, what's the little things that fuel narcs? Well, it can be so simple as somebody patting you on the shoulder, or making you a drink. That's a little, very small burst of fuel, because it's a kind gesture, you see. So it's not all about what's said, but it's often by a person's expression or their body language or the things that people do. Clem, have you ever thought about going public and quitting your daytime job to teach about narcissism? It is something that I would enjoy doing, actually, but it would have to be financially remunerative to the extent that I would feel that it would be appropriate for me to engage in doing that. I do enjoy what I do professionally, but there would come a point whereby it would be very interesting and enjoyable to continue to do this in a more formal way, if you will, and quit the day job, as you say. Anna 10 Kate, can a narc feel guilt? No. Hajir Ahmed, how to tell narc on a first date? If you read the articles, how to flush out a narcissist, which are on my blog, that will give you some tips in that respect. Ocean Sound 100, you don't dream, you said. That's right. You have no conscience. I have no conscience. That's correct. Empathet, have you ever not won a victim that you have tried to capture? No, I've always ensnared them. Philippou, do you rely on watching first? I assume you mean with regard to targeting people. Yes, that's correct. Annabelle Black, have you ever had an IPPS that has high narcissistic tendencies? I have had some which do have narcissistic tendencies because they're super empaths, but I would not say that it is massively high, because then the empathic traits would be too low and therefore would not serve the purposes that I require. Lance Preeb, HD, does your consultation offer still stand for this starving artist? You'll have to remind me of the offer. Perhaps if you email me, and we'll see where we get to with that. And Debbie Within, I need to read Sitting Target. Yes, you do. Philippou, do you live off your victims? No, I have my own money, but I live off them in terms of fuel, and have your post sent to your mother's address. No. Viking Warrior, it should be taught at school. You're absolutely right, it should. You're welcome, Nicole Rising. I'm pleased that you've applied the information to do that. Jenny Danaher, should narcissists be kept away from children? Well, it depends what their motivation is in terms of the interaction. Clearly, in certain instances, it's highly dangerous, and therefore the answer would be yes. In other instances, their intentions will be for themselves, but may have a positive outcome. So as a consequence of that, for example, you might have a teacher who's a narcissist, and therefore, with the children that are taught, is very keen to ensure that they succeed, pushes them, is excellent at the job because of the pride that is associated with that, and as a consequence of that, that means that the individual teacher there is having a good outcome. For example, there are good outcomes from what I do professionally, although some people wouldn't agree with that, but that is the case. So narcissism can be directed in a useful way, but certainly in a familial sense, there tends to be a lot of problems that will arise from it. And therefore, as a consequence of that, one would think, yes, steer children away from them in a familial setting. Tina Ray, new intimate partner primary source, knows about the narcissist cheating episodes but stays. She's intelligent, attractive, motivated, intuitive, and climbed the corporate ladder. Why the hell does she stay? Number of reasons, but it's all linked to being an empath. She probably wants to ensure that he becomes healed, or it will be that all of the good elements of the narcissist in terms of his charm and quite possibly what he does professionally, what he earns, in those circumstances, those are things that are attractive to the individual also. They feel guilty about going, even though they're the one being cheated on, because they don't want to give up on the relationship. And also, of course, they're addicted. There was a reason they were chosen. There was a reason they were susceptible to the seduction. And it all links to being addicted to what we are. And that is a lot of what is behind the reason why she stays. So, as a consequence of that, that's why that individual would stay. Miss Terry, do you like African American women who adore you? Naturally. Of course I do. Helen Hamilton, no problem with that. Why do you help your victims with regard to your kind? What is your motive? I have answered that before, but I'm happy to do so again. The reason that I do what I do is because I enjoy writing. I also have become irritated with the various inaccuracies that are stated about my kind, and especially me. And therefore I want to get rid of those inaccuracies. I have spent a long time finding out about myself and finding out about my kind and also my victims, and I want to impart that information. It is not about helping them per se, but rather that is a collateral consequence of what I do. What I do like to do, because it accords with my perverse sense of humour, is to weaponize empaths to go into battle against my kind on a global scale, because that appeals to my omnipotent nature. Malin P, do you ever recall feeling love, empathy as a child? No. Donna Dixon, what do you think of the women here that say they love you? I understand why they say it. And it's a little bit of fuel. Hajira Ahmed, how can we teach our kids about narcissism? Very good point. It's a difficult subject for a child to grasp because even adults struggle with it. But the way I would think that would be appropriate to do it is not so much to talk about narcissism and it being a disorder, but rather to recognise the behaviours that arise from narcissists for the purposes of realising there is something wrong and therefore to be aware of it. Certainly, I think there is considerable merit with regard to older children being made aware of the disorder, certainly before as they embark on dating and relationships and so on, because nobody spots us beforehand, and that's because the information is not out there, and people only find out about it after they've been through it or while they're going through it. Maple Bucket, have you been writing all of your life? I enjoyed writing as a child. I have done some writing as an adult, so I've done other pieces before, but more of it has been done as of late. Narc Free, have you ever formed an attachment to any of your supplies? Not love, of course, just attachment. No, I do not attach to them. Clem, you said you wanted to go public. Would you then find a wife that knows about narcissism, what you are? Not necessarily a wife, but it might be the case that I would find an IPPS in that regard, because, of course, if I did go public, she would pretty much find out rather quickly what I am. So I would have to head that one off at the pass, wouldn't I? Tammy Libertarian, give an example of inaccuracies in the information out there on narcissism. Okay. One of the inaccuracies that exists is, for example, saying that you should mirror our behaviour to get rid of us. All that does, other than a silent treatment, that will work if you mirror us by just remaining silent and ignoring us. But if you try to mirror us, a lot of the time you're giving fuel or challenge fuel, and we will just up the manipulation. So that's one of the inaccuracies that exists. Wendy Savage, do you like Spanish women? Yes, I do. Annabelle Black, are you empty inside? Yes, I am. Jane Powell, how can I get authority about narcissists because my mother lost me, my children, and my daughter her sons? I don't quite understand the question. Do you mean, how can you get the authorities to understand about narcissists? Very difficult, because they won't necessarily have the knowledge and information and understanding. What you might do is, if you're able to, is perhaps enlist the support of a therapist or a psychologist that could write a report on the relevant individual for the purposes of utilising that with the authorities. That might be one way in there. Rolanda, it's like an interview with a vampire. SK, would you say that it is an omission that therapists treating narcissists do not seem to be interested in experience of partners of narcissists? It is indeed an omission, and a significant one at that. Cocoa-covered muscles. Is the primary goal of a narcissist to make their victim feel unseen? No, the primary goal of a narcissist is to gain fuel, but making their victim feel unseen is part of that aim. Angel Georgina, why does the mid-ranger fear abandonment yet gets rid of you, even though you've never shown this time them? They fear abandonment because they expect people to let them down as a consequence of their rampant paranoia. Rolanda, do you have an agent in Hollywood? Not yet. Male and P, do you truly want to destroy your partners, or is that a side effect of what you do? It's a side effect, and as I have explained, destroying them means that we kill the source of fuel. So when I say kill, I don't mean that they're actually killed, although that can happen, but rather the fact that we lose the source of fuel, so there is no point in doing it. Fox Wade, what's the worst you have hurt somebody? I have killed people. Hajira, what are things victims do that make them a better fuel source than others? well, essentially, cling on. Keep trying to make things better. Fail to recognise what's actually happening. Keep seeking answers when they won't be provided by the narcissist. Kim, how can I hurt a narc really bad? The most effective way is to go no contact. And if you want to go further and attack the narcissistic pillars, go and read Revenge. Marissa Womble, HD, do narcissists have a hard time falling asleep? I do. And that's a consequence of my mind racing. Rolanda, let's make an app to connect empaths to your kind so you can do this in a contained environment and people don't have to get hurt in the real world. I'm not sure how that would work. The empaths would still get hurt, wouldn't they? So that's a little bit strange. Amna Omar, yes, I did within my professional capacity. Philippou, have you been punished through the justice system? No. Although I have had some speeding points, so I suppose that applies. That's not a significant punishment. It didn't stop me doing anything. Rebel de Justice, are you involved in occult rituals? No. Malin P, do you suffer from anxiety? Very rarely. If my fuel levels are particularly low, that does happen. Nicole Rising, does rejection of a Hoover attempt create a massive narc injury, or does it make a narc regroup and try again? Depends on the type of narcissist and the other factors that are in play. Kim, is it common for a narc to never tell his girlfriend she's pretty? Yes, during devaluation. He would more than likely have said it during seduction. T-Mac, that must have been the psychopathic part of you that murdered people. Scary shit. It was necessary. And they fully deserved it. And the world is a better place for that particular group of people to have gone. Jane Powell, sorry if this has been asked, but do narcissists really hate you? And why don't they want to talk about what they do? Yes, they do hate you because in our minds you've let us down and you're not providing us with what we want. And that hatred is an emotion that is particularly prevalent. Why don't they want to talk about what they do? Well, that's because with a lesser they don't see that they're doing anything wrong. With a mid-range narcissist, they can recognise that they do something wrong, but they will not own the consequence of it. So, for example, the mid-range narcissist will say, I understand you're hurt by my silent treatments when I disappear for a few days, but if you didn't get in my face all of the time, I wouldn't have to do that, would I? So they recognise the consequence, but they don't own the consequence. And with a greater, won't talk about it because we see no reason to do so. Bernadette Cabral, my mother and brother seem better. Did they outgrow it, or am I just no longer a target? Probably that you are no longer a target, so they're not bothering with you. Or it might be that they have you in a golden period at present. That may be behind it. Jenny Danaher, is drink driving common in narcissists? Yes, it's relatively prevalent. Again, sense of entitlement and also a lack of accountability, thinking the rules do not apply. Philippou, have you ever had to relocate? I've relocated numerous times, but not had to. I chose to. Susan B., what is going through your mind while you're trying to fall asleep? All sorts. what I need to get done, various ideas, sometimes thinking about the blog and what needs to be written, thinking about what I'll be doing professionally, mind's whirring with lots and lots of thoughts, all generally about planning and organising and getting things done. Peter Klein, are you any time corrected in your demeanour, and how do you cope with it? Badly. Candido Simpson, since you can't love, do you hate? Yes. Hajira Ahmed, how does a narc react when their cover's been exposed? I answered that earlier. Miss Terry, how can you make these terrorist bombings stop? Cut off the supply of terrorists is the answer. The simple fact is this: if my house is flooding, I don't want people turning up with buckets and towels. I want to turn off the pipe that's causing the flooding. Jane Powell, also, why do they steal and claim everything of yours as their own? Our sense of entitlement, and we regard your resources as our resources. Stumbling around, how long can you cope without any fuel? A few days, I should imagine. I would be irritable and restless, but I think I would be able to manage for that period of time. Yvonne C. Well, don't fall asleep if you're driving. I don't want to find that someone's slapping a lawsuit on me for having sent you to sleep and you've crashed into somebody. Hajira, at what level should a victim take legal action to a narc? Well, that's too wide a question to answer, really. It depends what legal action you're looking at. Generally speaking, it's not a sensible idea to engage in litigation with a narcissist, because the potential for accord in terms of reaching an outcome is next to nil until such time as the viewpoint of the narcissist alters with regard to the individual. J.D. Allen, if I wanted a consultation, what would I expect to get out of it? You would get out of it that you would be listened to, you would get the insight into your situation, you would gain new observations on the dynamic, you would probably learn things about yourself, you would also learn methods of how to deal with the situation that you've got and moving forward. Ultimately, you would get insight and observation. Amna Omar, so you are either in the military or the police. No, I'm not. Kiana Lowe, that's very kind of you, but I don't like being hugged. Ocean Sound 100, if you get married again, who would you want? An narc, an empath, borderline, etc. Super empath, please. Robin S. Did you have a hit called Show Me Love? It's very good. The sociopath I was with took videos of us having sex all the time. Should I worry that he has posted them somewhere? There is the potential for that to happen. Louise G., were you disappointed to learn that there are many of your kind and you are not unique? There are very few who are like me, so that does not concern me. Foxway, can I teach you about female narcissists? I already do. They're very similar to male ones. Philippou, do you ever live in the moment? We invariably do. It's what happens at the moment that matters. Thank you, Steve Yan. I appreciate that. Scott Marcinek, is it true that mental abuse in the UK is illegal? There was recently legislation which addressed emotional abuse in terms of it making it actionable through the criminal courts. Yes, of course. There is always the issue of whether people will come forward and also the difficulties of proving it beyond a standard of reasonable doubt to secure a conviction. Bernadette Cabral, what sorts of people, if any, do narcissists admire? Generally those that they want to steal the traits from, though. So, successful people, people that we believe are on a par with us. Philippou, have you ever practiced mindfulness? The good doctors attempted to do so. My mind was moving too quickly. So, as a consequence of that, it didn't have any use to me. Kim, can anyone love the narcissist out of you? I know a few people who've tried and it didn't work. Fabby P, do you collect things other than people? Yes. Hajira Ahmed, aside from fuel, what are some things that you love? Well, as I've explained, I'm incapable of love. Mary Martin, if a narcissist says to you, I'm not who you think I am, wouldn't that indicate they know who they are and why they do what they do? Potentially, yes. Albeit, what tends to happen in that instance is, because a greater knows that they are something different, but they won't admit it. And those that tend to say, I'm not who you think I am, are often mid-rangers or lessers who are essentially bigging themselves up to be something more special than they actually are. And this paradox is that they do not accept that they are a narcissist, but they would think themselves to be, for example, some kind of evil genius. A person, HG, why don't you like to be touched? Basically, because it's an intimate act and I dislike intimacy intensely. Charlene, have you spotted any female greater narcissists during this live stream? No. Jane Powell, why can't they just let people love them? Why can't they just be happy? Wouldn't that be less effort than constantly always looking to be miserable and hurt people? I understand why you say that. The difficulty with that is it doesn't work that way. We have to create contrast, you see. And that means raising you up very, very high, and then when you let us down, because that is our perspective in that regard, we then have to make the fall terrible. This, of course, is what applies to the dynamic with an intimate partner primary source, and they're the ones that suffer the most. Amnard, does therapy make narcissists better manipulators? Yes. Maple Bucket, does the lesser range narcissist stalk the most? No. Peter Klein, when you have talks with a narcissistic boss, is it like kind family or like feuds? Depends if you're in the golden period or you're devalued. So you have to bear that in mind. "17 Bad Kitty, have you looked into demon possession? No. Scott Marcinek, do you keep fit, exercise? I do. I occasionally go to the gym, but I do a lot of running and play football. Rebel Day Justice, do you pray sometimes? Only to myself. Noted indie, but I've yet to be convinced. Foxwade, can an empath reverse the narcissist tactics? You can't reverse them, but you can counter them. SK, do you agree that narcissistic behaviour and thought process are used for self-esteem regulation? I think there is merit in that observation, yes. Kim Sikorsky, do you believe one of your kind should go to prison if they have killed people regardless of what the reasons behind it might be? Well, no, I think the reasons behind it are entirely pertinent. Ballerina 9, have you ever refused to do something with an IPPS she wanted to do during seduction? Yes, but I suggested something better so she didn't mind. Stronger Wendy, what does it mean when you tap your finger? You are annoyed by the question or formulating an answer? I don't know if you mean that of me or narcissists as a whole. I'll assume it's of narcissists as a whole, and essentially that's as a consequence of being irritated by the questioner. Argira, aside from fuel, what excites you? Anything associated with the relevant fuel, it's all entwined. Nikki B, are you provided with our email address when we comment on the blog? No, I'm not, so you needn't be concerned about that. Rolanda, do pets help with narcissism? They certainly do. They're excellent for triangulation. Renee Saval, that is correct. I have not learned to be intimate, and that is why I do not like to be touched. Louise G, is your mother still alive? Unfortunately. Katina, pleased that you think so. Philippou, have you ever been reported to the police? Yes. Stevie Ann, what caused your father's death? His heart packed up. 17 Bad Kitty, sex question. Would you allow a victim to use you sexually, i.e. be in no contact, except for sex? Well, I wouldn't allow them to use me. I would be using them. But if our desires lined up in that respect, then you could see it that you were using one of us. Cat Lady, will an escaped mid-ranger hoover again following initial grand hoover discard? Struggling to follow the phraseology there, but essentially, if you're saying you've escaped from a mid-ranger, then if his initial grand hoover has failed, there is likely to be a period of respite because he will retreat wounded and probably seek out somebody else. But there is the risk for the hoover in due course. Stronger Wendy, you can't hear me tapping my finger. What you can probably hear is the wheel on the mouse being moved around as I'm scrolling through the comments. Mary Martin, why would a narcissist post pics of his wife on Facebook, but take deliberate effort to avoid being in the pictures with her, even though I know they are married? Clearly, he thinks that you're stupid and therefore doesn't notice. Jane Powell, what actually causes someone to want to constantly hurt someone? The need for fuel. Why would you triangulate with a pet? For fuel, obviously. But of course it can be used positively. So, for example, showing an interest in an animal and caring for it, because someone is an animal lover, binds them to you, and gains positive fuel. By the same token, kicking the cat in the air when you come in would upset them and gain negative fuel. Rolanda, do you see the cruelty in the Three Stooges, or do you think it's funny? I know of them, but I've never watched it. Miss Terry, am I willing to have a non-sexual relationship with an admirer? Well, the simple fact remains, it's very difficult for me to interact with everybody that would like to interact with me on a regular basis as a consequence of demand. But in terms of having a courteous and friendly interaction with those that admire me, there is no bar to that, although you need to keep in mind what I am. Photo via pop. Aren't super empaths extremely wounded by your treatment? Is that the desired effect? They're hurt by the way that they're treated, yes. So, as a consequence, that means that they were found in with fuel. C-Star, are you able to give legal advice in a personal consult? No, I'm not a lawyer, and the protocol explains as well that it is that no legal advice is provided, and nor should it be taken as such. There are warranties. No warranties are given in that respect. Philippou, do I want to feel full of fuel? Yes. Scott Marcinet, please explain the largest differences between the low, mid and high range narcissists. This is a very involved answer, but essentially it goes along these lines. Lessers have no awareness, they're very aggressive, and they have a low control threshold on their ignited fury. Mid-rangers are for the most part passive-aggressive, they are of a greater cognitive function. They also have no awareness of what they are, but can recognise that some of their behaviours cause difficulties, but they will not own the consequence of those difficulties. Greaters know what they are, highly manipulative, cunning, planning, malicious. Would I allow an intimate partner play dominant in bed? During the seduction, possibly, but they're not shoving anything up my bottom. I can tell you that much. Kim, can a narcissist get fuel only from his friends, not a woman? A narcissist can get fuel from everybody. SK, could a narcissist outsource a sense of his martyrdom by manipulating his partner to sacrifice or humiliate himself, herself? Indeed he could. Marissa Womble, have you ever dated a mid-range empath? There is no such thing. Narcangel, what do you look for in a lieutenant? Loyalty, energy, compliance, fuel. Siobhan, do you prefer this interaction where you speak to us over written interaction on the blog and social media? It's a different form of interaction, so I enjoy being able to deal with more questions in a quicker fashion, because of course I can speak far faster than I can type. However, it doesn't allow me to perhaps provide the detail that would be provided in a written response. So it's different responses to the formats. Debbie Within, does the mid-range and lesser narcissist underestimate their victims? All narcissists underestimate their victims because of our sense of superiority. However, whether there is any consequence of that underestimation is a different matter. And of course, some of us are better at dealing with the outcome of such an underestimation. Stumbling around. Oh, you prude. I know. More tea, Vicar? You're welcome, Mo Cowboy 55. Amna Omar, are you thinking of writing your autobiography? I am in effect doing so, but in various different parts of my life. So there we are. Ballerina 9. What was the activity your IPPS wanted to do that you declined during seduction? It was to go to an Adele concert. Jen Esquire, how would you describe fuel? It is the emotional response of an appliance generated as a consequence of an action of ours. Rolanda, have you ever had an MRI scan? No, I have not. Kim, is it normal for a narcissist to live two lives, one as a devout Muslim and one as a male whore? It's entirely feasible for that to happen. It's compartmentalization. Eunice number 1. I still love you, but I think you're a psychopath rather than a narcissist. As long as you still love me, that's all that matters, isn't it? Annabelle Black. Are you a shy person or overly sociable just for attention purposes? I'm not shy. Catherine T. HG, in your opinion, sexiest female psychopath? Fictional character. You'll have to leave that one with me. I'll have a think about that. Clem, what's your purpose of this live chat beside obvious fuel, as you call it? To answer questions for my readers and listeners. Fox Wade, would you ever consider talking certain aspects of narcissism and love questioning, sticking only to one subject to go into more detail? Do you mean, for example, that there would be a live stream all to do with hoovering? Yes, I would be more than happy to do that. Not a problem, Renesa. You're very welcome. Thaik Samvu, am I a Freemason? No, I'm not. Kiana Lowe, do narcissists care if you reveal their nude photos to colleagues? We shared nude photos and I have his. It depends in the way that you do so. But that would show that it would be more about you exerting control over him, not so much the issue of the nudity, albeit that would be what he was complaining about. Louise G. Are victim narcs also referred to as covert? Well, I don't, but they possibly could be. Peter Klein, what are the consequences of that underestimation of a victim? It might be their desire to escape, for example, or the fact that they are not as under control as first thought. Thank you, SK. I set out a brief for what I would like to see, and Dominion organises that for me, provides me with a selection, and then I make a choice. Mary Martin, can prolonged anxiety, i.e. without fuel, cause a psychotic break? Potentially, I think it can. Have you ever experienced this? No, I have not. Jane Powell, you say you like to hurt people, but yet you're helping people understand. Don't you feel better doing something good? I do whatever is required. Sometimes I do good things, sometimes I do bad things. As long as I get what I require, that's all that matters. Scott, were you ever in a situation of fear from retaliation? If so, what was the threat? There is potential for retaliation within some of my professional endeavours. It was dealt with. I was not concerned unduly by it. You're very welcome, Renee. I'm sure we will engage again. You're welcome, Claudine. No problem at all. Narc free. Can a super empath flip the switch on the mid-range narcissist? Of course. It's called the empathic supernova. Rolanda, do narcissists understand workplace policies and procedures better than everyone else? Of course they do. They will tell you that they do, and then they will ignore them. Have I ever considered stand-up comedy, Lance? No, I haven't. No problem, a person. Pleased that you enjoyed it. Make sure your battery's charged next time around. Foxway, thank you. The pictures, as I've explained, I set the brief for it and a minion organises them for me, but all of this is my doing. I am essentially an army of one. Michael, how would I react if I had a victim I could not control? Well, I probably wouldn't have selected them in the first place if I felt that there was a concern about control, but ultimately I would bring them to heel. Catherine T. Do you believe a super empath can have a sadistic streak? No. Sandra, I've read that recovery from this abuse can be more difficult than kicking heroin. Your thoughts? I would agree with that observation. Meckel, are narcs religious? Yes. Meckel, can you fix a narc? No. Ms. May, you're welcome. Narcangel, how close do you think a super empath is to becoming a narcissist? Not hugely close, because they have significant empathic traits. It's when they're dialed down you get the supernova. That is the consequence of that. So there are moments where the narcissist, if you will, takes over, but it's more in case of if somebody parks their tanks on your lawn, the super empath reacts, but does not go and park their tanks on anybody else's. Ocean Sound 100. Do you have a brother or a sister and they're narcissists too? I do have a brother and a sister, and they are not narcissists. Goodness me, there's a lot of yellow blobs there. That's perturbing. What are those things? Foxway, do you think about the past, the future, or do you deal with situations and life day to day? Largely, I deal with the present. Rebel, do you induce trance or kind of hypnosis on your targets? I think there is some degree of hypnosis that takes place. Ocean Sound 100, how young were you when you were first abused? I cannot remember a time when I was not. So, from very young. Kiana Lowe, my art wasn't even attractive, it was the voice that got me. Often is the case with some of us. Louise G., how do you recognise others of your kind, and do you recognise them immediately? I don't do so immediately, as I had explained earlier. After a short while, I can tell what they are, and it's a consequence of having spent so much time with my kind and knowing what I'm like, that I'm able to recognise it in terms of the things that are said. Sometimes it's a consequence of looking for what I call the expression roulette, whereby with lesser narcissists, you'll often get a blank look because they don't know how they should respond. That's often a giveaway. And with mid-rangers and graters, there is a degree of knowing how to form an expression, but there is a slight delay before it's located. It's almost along the lines of, with you instinctively respond. So sad face when you're sad, happy face when you're happy, concerned face when you're concerned. But with us, because we don't experience those emotions, but we know how to perform the expression, we have to think about it. So you'll see a pause as we think, what is the reaction that I need? I need to look concerned. Right, adopt concerned face. And it only happens for a moment. But if you learn to spot it, and you will, that's a very good giveaway in terms of the person that you're dealing with. Rolanded, do you use dating apps? I have done. I don't need to at the present time. Fox Wade, have you ever been happy with a primary source? No, I don't do happiness. I suppose there's a degree of contentment. Then replace them with another upon speculation that someone will be better, or you just want them more. I don't do it on speculation. It has to be correct. Robin S., I'm pleased that's the case. Olesia, do you think it's possible for religion to be at the root of narcissism? I don't think it is the root of it, but I certainly think that it is an environment that cultivates many of our kind. SK, is it a possibility that POTUS may instigate a war, not to be a loser, that he's so terrified of B-Wing? Not sure what that means. There is a risk that that could happen, of course. 17 Bad Kitty, does it make you mad when a victim gets around your blocking silent treatment by finding ways to contact you just to fuck with you? Or is it just fuel? If they contact us and are problematic, that's challenge fuel. Sierra Grant, how do you get a narcissist to view as an equal on par with you? You can't. Nikki B, can a book be written on your machinations with your victims? I know some interactions are in some books, but I would enjoy reading them in one place. There are 2 books that will address that, The Asylum of the Grotesque and Dark Cupid, both of which are in hand. Dark Cupid is not for the weak of spirit or heart. Philippou, how many do you have as supply at one time? How many of what? People? I have lots in my fuel matrix. Faye, when a narcissist steals character traits, do they really believe that they possess those traits? Yes, they do. D, do you think narcissists are usually firstborn? No. I think that... Excuse me. I was only writing about that on the blog this afternoon. I know of narcissists as the younger child or the youngest, the middle child or the elder or eldest. Free Spirit, why do narcissists treat you better when you treat them badly? I assume you're talking about when the victim treats us badly. It's the concern that our control rather, is eroding, and as a consequence of that, what we may have to do is exert that control more effectively, and often that means offering you a carrot again, a lovely, shiny, golden one. You're welcome, Angelina. Kiana. So why can't God fix you if you believe in him? Do you think you're superior to him? He can't fix me because he's not real. Colette. Do you enjoy spending time with large gatherings in person? I do, as long as I'm on a stage, or if I am in a podium or such like. I don't like to be in a crowd because of being hustled and touched, etc. Mary Martin, from your perspective, what percentage of the total world population is NPD? I would put it at about 1 in 6. Colleen, is it possible for narcissists to be misdiagnosed as borderline personality disorder? Yes, it is. Malin, are you an introvert or an extrovert? I'm an extrovert. Pathless Land, if fuel is like a drug, could you withdraw from it? No. Renee, which book covers types, ranges of NARC? Sitting Target tells you something of that. There are going to be specific books to each school and each cadre in due course. Fox Wade, I would like to know more about how you prepare yourself for seduction. Want some tips, do you, for doing some pulling? Fair enough. Read Sitting Target. Clasheri, what happens when you run out of money and don't have an IPPS or IPSS? We will go and find a non-intimate secondary source to talk to in order to gain that money. There's always somebody that we can turn to in that respect. Brown Eye Scad. Does a narcissist always know they are a narcissist? The vast majority of narcissists don't know what they are, and nor are they capable of finding out either. Rolanda, you are very articulate, thank you. When you are not wearing your mask, do you cuss more? I swear more in certain situations, but I don't swear a huge amount. As a consequence of the ability to be articulate, it's far more effective. Of course, there are occasions when swearing is very useful, but generally speaking, I am not a potty mouth. I prefer to express myself in an alternative way, so that is why it's preferable for me not to swear. Kim, do you orgasm when you're with your empath? Well, depends what we're doing. If we're doing the shopping, that doesn't tend to happen. Robin S., you say you don't like to be touched. Does that mean you don't like to kiss? I regard that as a necessary act as part of the seduction, and the need to seduce overrides the difficulties with intimacy. You're very welcome, Colleen. No problem at all. Susan B., when do you think the grant scheme will be completed? I don't have a date for completion yet. Tina Ray. Narcissist discarded me years ago in a relationship with someone else, went no contact. He showed up at my front door distraught, asking for help with his daughter who I adore. What should I do? Maintain no contact. DC Izzy, can empaths become narcissists? No. You're welcome, Philippou. Kilasheri, do you think they, mid-range, actually love their children? They think that they do, but they do not. Miss Terry, how can I make you part of my life forever? Sir H.G. Tudor. Buy my books and have them next to you. Maple Bucket, do you make someone a dirty little secret if you're embarrassed of them in some kind of way? Yes, that can happen. SK, depends what you are shopping for. Good point. Thyke Sarvnew, what is your IQ? Last time it was tested, it was 134. Kim, are all narcs unfaithful? The vast majority are, yes. Christy Conroy, you don't seem to use the term borderline. Do you put them in the greater category or do they fall into the ranges? Some say they can empathise. Yes, they can empathise. They have empathy. I don't put borderlines in the categories because they're not narcissists. They have narcissistic traits, but they're not narcissists. Jane Powell, I believe narcissists are badly hurt people who've had everything knocked out of them, and because they've got no one to turn to, everything gets mixed up as they get older, so they get wired wrong. There may be some force in that. Narc-free, do mid-rangers experience debts and bankruptcy due to not being as resourceful as high-range narcs? That can happen. That tends to be more of a lesser trait, though. Colette, do you control the shopping trip or see it as a platform, as a stage to perform? It is a platform. Mackerel, is the way they look important to a narcissist? Depends. As a consequence of the relevant class traits, so elites and somatics prefer looks. They are of particular importance to them. Annabelle Black, do you prefer introvert, docile, IPPS? No, as I explained earlier, I prefer super empaths and those that are feisty, and those that have lots about them. And so long as they accord with the class traits and the empathic traits and the special traits, that works for me. Peter Klein, do you think narcs can like kissing, or is that too empathic? I think that the physical sensation is not disagreeable, but the intimacy that is conveyed with it is uncomfortable, and therefore, as a consequence of that, one can deal with it during seduction, but one prefers to avoid it during devaluation. Kim, are you good-looking by society standards? Yes, I am. I am roguishly handsome. Ocean Sound 100. Do you have a good relationship with your siblings? I don't see much of my half-brother, my natural brother and sister. I have a reasonable relationship with them. They would prefer it to be better. I tell them it could be far worse. So, in that respect, it is somewhere in the middle, I suppose. Antistar 211. Did colonialism make the West narcissistic? Not sure about that. Catherine T. Could you date a person with oppositional defiant disorder or conduct disorder? Indeed I could. Because I would bring them into line. Cause them to come to heel. Annabelle Black, have you lied about anything to us on the blog? Already answered this? No. Carol Rankin, if you were offered a miracle cure to be able to have normal emotions, would you take the cure? I would be reluctant to do so because I see that many of those normal emotions to which you refer causes weakness, and therefore I don't want that. I recognise that, of course, many people say there are upsides to those emotions, and I recognise that, but I function effectively as I am. Steve Young, will your machinations ease with age? Well, very much depends if everybody behaves themselves for me, doesn't it? Mikhail, do you seek revenge for your victims if someone, like their family or old friend, hurts them? I have taken revenge on behalf of people because it benefited me to do so. Rolanda, when shopping, do you navigate so that you get better looking cashiers to service you? What do you mean by service me? Do you mean serve me? Behave yourself. No, they wave me over, naturally, because they want to serve me. Philippou, did your mother break my father's heart? Yes, he did. She did, rather. Indeed it is, Amna. Indeed it is. Stevian, no, you're not getting the rattle back yet. Get in the corner and behave. Thank you, Miss Terry. Very kind of you to say that. Susan B., if your father wasn't narcissistic, why don't you have feelings for him? He left me to my own devices when he ought to have looked after me. That's why. I recognise that essentially he was a good man, but I didn't really experience a lot of that. He was more concerned with protecting my brother and sister. Amna, how would you feel about an empath who had a very similar childhood to yours? Would you pity them or envy them? I wouldn't pity them. I wouldn't envy them either. The fact that they had such a childhood would mean that they're likely to be damaged in some way, and as a consequence of that, that means that they're going to be susceptible to my machinations. 17 Bad Kitty, do you think you're like your mother? Do you care if you are? She's a narcissist, I am as well, so I am like her in that respect, but that's where the similarity ends. I'm far superior to her. Adria Ross, are narcissists more inclined towards BDSM sexual relationships? More inclined than who? Normal people? If so, yes. Carol Rankin, are you being treated for post-traumatic stress disorder? No. Got a stone, have you ever had a very special super empath? Yes. Teresa, correct. Antistar, do women break hearts more than men? I think it's probably equal. M.E., that's a good question. HG, is there a question you want to answer that no one has yet asked me? How considerate of you. Nothing springs to mind, actually. I've enjoyed the range of questions that I've been asked. Some naturally are ones that many people want to be answered, and some are very interesting in terms of how the thought that has gone into them as well, and some have been quite amusing. So, round of applause for you guys for these questions. Donna Dixon, do you feel rage when seeing the happiness of others? Usually it's jealousy and envy, and it may cause the ignition of fury. 17 Bad Kitty, what was special about your super empath? The quality and quantity of the fuel. Scott Marcinek, when was the last time you cried? I faked a tear in an interaction with the good doctors, but I haven't cried since I was a child. And even then, that was frowned upon. Good Mares, what about translation of your books? They've been translated into Spanish. I'm looking at them being translated into French also, and possibly further afield in due course. There is so much to do. Kiana Lowe, why shouldn't I laugh? Kim Cooksey, how would you react if someone knew your true identity? They wouldn't. But if somehow they did, I would have to disincentivize them. Why would he fly from the United Kingdom to the USA, be in my city, and not attempt to see me? Simple reason is he didn't want to. Either because he thought that that was a good way of triangulating you with someone or something else, so you would react and give fuel, or that he was focused elsewhere and didn't give you anything whatsoever. SK, do you find feeling uncertain unsettling, so that you need to escape into arrogance. I think you mean, do I find feeling uncertainty unsettling? I think that's correct, yes. Malin P, what is the best revenge someone could execute against me? The toppling of my narcissistic pillars. Christy Conroy, is a covert narc always a greater? Or can a covert nature exist within other ranges? They are found within mid-range and greater, but as I say, it's not a term I utilise because it's too broad brush. Jane Powell, why don't narcs ask for help when they know it's past abuse that's obviously caused it? In fairness, most of the time, they don't realise that. Carol Rankin, are the good doctors using you for observational purposes as opposed to treatment? There are a whole raft of reasons behind this interaction. Ocean Sound 100, why do you want to get married? I've never said that I would. If you mean that about narcissists generally, you're right, part of it is the residual benefits of having someone to cook and clean. Ballerina 9, yes I am. And you know that's the case, so stop being disobedient. Terrell Tanner, how many times have I been left in no contact? Numerous times, but it doesn't last. Marcia Knowles, do you lose yourself in relationships? Good question. Of course, I don't actually know what myself is, do I? So, but we do, because we attach you to us, and we don't know where you end or we begin. Jojo Bongiorno, do most narcissists have narcissistic parents? I think that they do, yes. Scott Martinet, go back to the killing. What's the story? Was it revenge, self-defense, gun, knife, strangle? What is this? Cluedo? HG in the study with a copy of Splintered Malice. Wasn't revenge, no. Self-defense formed part of it, and a gun was involved. Stumbling around, can you relax? Probably not. Catherine T. I thought you were referring to Manchester United then. Oh man, you just said disobedient. Yes, I did. Disobedient. Louise G. What is the best way to tell if someone is a narcissist or just an asshole? Empathy. If they've got a bit, they're just an asshole. If there's none, they're more than likely to be a narcissist. Why do I call them good doctors? It's a turn of phrase that is often attached to it. I think there might have been a film called that. Not because I think that they are good. Philippi, what did I want to be when I was 6? A dictator of a medium-sized country with lots of gold braid on my uniform. Either that or an ice cream seller. Jane Powell, and why do they bring things up from years ago and can't seem to move on? Are you talking about us? The simple fact is we can move on. We often ride off into the sunset with nary casting a glance in your direction. However, we bring things up from the past because we know how it will affect you. Miss Terry, do you know how awesome you are? I do, and truly adored. Well, I would hope that be the case. Catherine T, can you be my Hannibal Lecter on call? If you supply the Chianti, it's a deal. DC Izzy, what is an epsilon semi-moron? It arises from the excellent novel by Aldous Huxley called Brave New World. And in that, it envisages a world where there is genetic engineering and people are placed into certain castes. So you have alphas, betas, gammas, deltas, so on and so forth. And an epsilon semi-moron is essentially somebody who's been created who is thick, they have next to no decent intelligence, and they're used for the most repetitive and rudimentary of tasks, but they have been created in a way that they take great pride in that, and they don't think that it's terrible being that way, and in a way they revel in their stupidity. So that's where it originates from, and I use it to describe someone who I regard as thick, unintelligent and incompetent. Carol Rankin, were you ever severely punished as a child for displaying kindness? Yes. Mary Martin, has there ever been a woman who got the best of you? If so, what did she do? Nobody's bested me. Christy Conroy, what inspired and intrigued you initially to seek treatment from the good doctors? As I mentioned before, it was a consequence of the insistence of my family and me wanting to secure certain aims of my own. Draw Fatal Grace, what do I do when I'm alone, other than writing your blogs? I will watch films. Sometimes I will read, but I don't get a lot of time. I will update information about certain things. I will stay in touch with people. And speak to them on the telephone, or engage in thinking about promotional work for the blog and so on and so forth. So a variety of things. Sometimes it's exercise. Colette, was I walloped as a child? I was given a good larruping. Yes. China Cat Art. Do narcissists use their kids to hoover the ex? They certainly do. That is a proxy hoover. Annabelle Black. When is my next book coming out? Should be in a fortnight. ABB. Lisa Charwood. Can narcissists be slightly stupid? Yes. Catherine T. Would you speak to a group of psychologists? I thought I already was in that particular household, but I would indeed, and I have been doing that just recently. Well, not a group, but I was speaking to somebody who is a psychologist, and it wasn't for the purposes of a consultation, but rather was a formal discussion about my work. Do I like to cook? Not usually, but I will do it for the purpose of seduction. Jeff Bash, how does one become an ally of a narc? Hang with me, Jeff. You can be my ally if you wish. Ocean Sound 100, do I have a degree of any sort? Yes, I do. When you get physically ill, does it get more difficult to keep the facade? I don't get physically ill very often, but when it does happen, that is correct. Colette, is all your intelligence sourced fuel from other people, or have you studied? No, I am naturally very clever, but I will embellish it for the purposes of my interactions with the victims in real life. Christy Conroy, have I ever had a brain scan? No, I have not. Robin S., am I a Gemini? You're quick-witted, thank you. Great with words, thank you. And it makes me think that you are. Okay. Draw Fatal Grace, you try to keep yourself occupied. Absolutely correct. Annabelle Black, would you do a seminar once you're outed? Well, first of all, I would not be outed. It's my choice. But yes, I would do a seminar. Absolutely. Adria Ross, do you think there will ever be an effective treatment or a cure? Well, as they say, today's impossible is tomorrow's normal. So there's a possibility it could happen. Jojo Bongiorno, what were your mother's parents like? Are they narcissists? I didn't know them very well, but I understand that my maternal grandfather was one, yes. Archangel, why do narcissists use prostitutes? Because they're intimate, they are tertiary intimate partner sources, and therefore fuel can be gained, but it's also part of creating a contrast, often with regard to the Madonna whore complex, between the idolised intimate partner, who at this juncture is placed in devaluation because of the infidelity, but they're still regarded as pure, and there is a desire to interact with those that are deemed to be impure. Katina, it's almost midnight there. You should be getting to sleep. Well, thank you for your concern, but I don't tend to fall asleep until 2 or 3 in the morning, so you needn't worry about that. But I will be wrapping up shortly because I've got other things to do. Catherine T, can I take a look when you have a brain scan? If I do, why not? Anna Oma, would you think of getting a brain scan? Possibly. anti-Zionism movement. Could a narcissist recover if they were made to re-experience their original wounds? I know where you're going with that question. I could see the logic in it, but I don't necessarily see how that could actually be achieved. Annabelle Black, was your mother sexually abused? I don't know. Fox Wade, do you have any of your own personality, or is it all mirroring? There are elements there. A lot of it is mirroring. Thank you, Indy. I'm glad that you like that. Thank you, Empathet. 17 Bad Kitty. Have you ever been addicted to good fuel? What happened? I'm addicted to all fuel. Clem, is it possible for a narcissist to get a university degree and not retain their education information post-graduation? Fake their way through college? It absolutely is the case. And I remember reading, actually, recently about an individual that had done so for the purposes of securing attendance on another course and then becoming a lawyer. That was the end of her career. Susan B., did your mother treat you differently than your sister and brother? She did. She had a much greater expectation of what I was expected to achieve, and therefore, when she kept moving the goalposts, I suffered the fury that arose from that as a consequence of my apparent inability to achieve what she wanted me to do. Jeff asked me, how does one hang with an arc? From a rope? No. I wouldn't do that to Jeff. I like you. We can go to the pub, for example, if that's your kind of thing. But you tell me how you'd like to hang. Because, after all, it's all about you. You're in the golden period. Barry Barrett, how can I stop you? Me? You can't. Miss Terry, would I like to be President of the United States? It's a great country, so yes. Antonia, infatuation is the most addicting drug on earth. Would you agree with that statement? I think that's true. Gina's no. Can we do this on a weekly basis? Ooh. But then, what if I find it becomes stale? What would happen then? We shall see. Definitely monthly, possibly twice a month. Any more than that, I'd be spoiling you, and we can't have that. Okay? Right, final 5 minutes now. I'll turn into a pumpkin come midnight. Do I want to hang out with some fun psychologists? Absolutely. Thank you, ABB. That's appreciated. Adria Ross, have you ever thought about the afterlife? And if so, are you concerned about what might await you? I have thought about it and there isn't one. Teresa, you do a much better job as president than any since JFK. Why aren't I better than JFK? Siobhan Galland, how many siblings did your father have? 2. Christy Conroy, have you confronted your mother re her narcissism? No. Pointless. Do you stay in contact for the benefits of positive or negative fuel? I stay in contact for the benefits of negative fuel and do so also in order, as I explained earlier, which you may have missed, to lull her into a false sense of security. Yes, Miss Terry. It's time to disengage. I just got to put you on the shelf, so you're still in the golden period, so don't worry. Don't worry about that. SK, you're very welcome, and I know that you do pose a number of questions on the comment section of the of my videos, and they're very thoughtful questions and well constructed, but I don't often have time to answer many questions on YouTube, as you've probably noticed, as in the comment section. So do ask them at the blog, though, because you raise some very interesting points at times, so do that. You're welcome, Susan B. I'm pleased that you found it great. Kim, do I like sex? Yes, I do, because of the fuel that comes from it. Elsa, you're most welcome. Thank you, Dancing Needle. I'm glad that you think that's the case. Gina's no one. In essence, yes, I do that. Good recovery there, Teresa. I like it. Nikki B. Yes, that's right. I used my non-white girlfriends to make Matriarch angry. When they were devalued, did I use her disapproval as a tool? Absolutely correct. You're welcome, Christy, and thank you for posing the questions as well. You're welcome, Debbie Within, and also Stronger Wendy. Thank you very much. Goodbye, Denise Guy. Thank you for joining in. 17 Bad Kitty. Is it uncomfortable for me to be honest? Not in this forum because I don't know any of you, but I wouldn't be able to do this if I knew you in real life. You're welcome, Serena. Kim Sikorsky, I'm not giving you the silent treatment. I answered a number of your questions. No problem, SK. A broken wind, I think. Broken wind, I do apologise. It's a slip of the tongue there. A broken wing. I think they did. No anti-Zionism movement. I'm not involved with the occult. Good, Adrian Ross. I'm pleased that's the case. ABB, I'm sure we can sort that. Cheerio, TT. Toodle pip. Yes, Archangel. See you on the blog in due course. Thank you, Wellesley Ford. What a fantastic name that is. Wellesley Ford. Marvellous. Thank you for listening all the way through. And you're most welcome. Fox Wade, the fuel I give you. I'm just so giving, aren't I? That's why. You're welcome, Sandra. Please, that's the case. And that's the whole point of the the information and the insight that you will achieve. No problem at all, Carol. And Debbie Within, see you again soon. Kiana, what's the last thing on my mind? Do I pray? Only if it suits my purposes for the purpose of seduction, otherwise I don't. Before bed, what's the last thing on your mind? How did that person get there? Well, good night, everybody. Good afternoon and goodbye. Thank you very much for your excellent questions and for your interaction today. Very enjoyable. If I didn't manage to answer all your questions, do try again. Got through a considerable number there. And now, time for me to move on to other things, and I look forward to interacting with you further, be it on the blog or with the next live stream, which I will announce the date of in the next few days. Thank you once again, and remember, knowledge gives you understanding, and understanding will give you freedom. Goodbye.